Hi everyone, it's Nick's Book, Music, and Game Review here. I have done a channel revamp on this YouTube channel. I have decided that this channel, needs some sort of revamp or change, and I figured, what a good way to start than to kind of discuss things that aren't related to gaming or music. That will still come to the channel. I decided that a lot of my older videos just didn't fit the channel's vibes anymore, so I privatized a bunch of my videos, and I'm now staring into a different direction with this channel. This first kind of video is going to be a little scuffed, because I live on a college campus, so I had to switch dorms, and so it's been kind of messy, but essentially, I have also gotten into Tolkien's work in the past couple years, I would say, more so in the recent year. And I've sort of, gotten familiar with his work. There's still a lot. I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to preface this. I am in no way a Tolkien expert. There's definitely a lot more than half of these books I have not fully read yet. I'm going to be honest. But what I've decided to do was, in order for me to get into Tolkien, I want to get as much of anything that's been written on the world of Middle-earth as soon as possible and as much as possible. And I've essentially, quote-unquote, completed my collection when it comes to all of his mainline books that were edited by Christopher and stuff that was released when he was alive. And I have completed essentially what you would call the mainline connection. Obviously, I've, as you can see, and there's some books off camera I will show, you could see that I have completed, these are all the main illustrated. I'll show you these in a minute, but I have completed my collection for now. I'm still collecting books. Right now I'm in the phase of finding different editions of books that I already have. So I have like paperbacks of versions of books. I have hardcovers. Essentially that's what I'm working on right now is I'm going to different bookstores around the area when I have the money and time, and essentially collecting different Tolkien books that I think look really cool. And like I said, right now my biggest thing is right behind the books that are here that I'll go through. I'm getting through the History of Middle-earth set. I've already read through Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, The Hobbit. I love those books. Those are classics for so many reasons. But right now I'm in the middle of working on stuff for my Middle-earth club that is at my college. And so currently I'm putting together a bunch of material within copyright law to essentially propel this into stardom on campus. But yeah, so I guess let's get right down to it. I'm going to go a little unorthodox here. You're essentially what I should be starting with. I'm not going to start with, but I'm just going to get through all my miscellaneous sort of books, if you want to call it. Then I'll get to some of the big main head honchos. First, I've got a paperback edition of the Tales from the Perilous Realm. I know Adventures of Tom Bombadil, I'm pretty sure is in here. Different fairy stories that were authored by Tolkien. Book I have not read yet. I will get to. And like I said, I'll be honest, there's a lot of these books I have not been able to get through and read because this is something new. Now, to preface this too, I was not really a big reader growing up until I switched to become a history major here at my college. So essentially, my love for reading has just went through the roof. And it's like I'm playing catch up. It's like, I gotta read this, but it's like, it's not that easy. And so I've been getting through things one at a time. Sometimes I'll go to another book and kind of, behind me on my bookshelf, I have a bunch of Greek, Roman, Christian history books, horror books above that. I'll probably do my whole personal library video later. That's going to be a lot longer than this one because I have a lot of other books that aren't Tolkien related. But yeah, I'm excited to share this with y'all and, kind of take this channel in a different direction. Actually do reviews, like proper reviews. Like I'm thinking once I read through some of these other books, I'm going to do like reviews of these books. And so It's kind of the idea. I also have a tattoo of Elvis right here, so, Just proves to you how far deep I've been getting into Tolkien. Anyway, I have this one. I heard it's pretty good. A lot of just collection stories. And so it has Alan Lee illustrations, which, by golly, that guy is really good at illustrating for Tolkien. Let me tell you what. But so let's set this on the shelf. What should we get to next? This one's called, I read a little bit of this. I haven't gotten through it too much. I actually lost the spot I was in because I had a bookmark in here, and yeah. It's called The Philosophy of Tolkien. I'm big on philosophy, like Plato's Republic, Socrates, Aristotle, any of those guys, I'll read when I can. Mind you. There's a lot of reading I want to do, but it's just like, it takes forever to get through it. Anyway, this one's more, it basically, it says right in the back, it has 1,000 references to the text. And essentially, it goes into the philosophical nature of Middle-earth. It takes, philosophy and applies it to the world of Tolkien. This author, from what I read, he goes through different anecdotes and analogies, anthropology, cosmology, all sorts of ologies of the book, and explores the philosophical questions like, what is God in Middle-earth? What's fate mean? What does freedom mean in the world of Middle-earth? So, like, it takes these fundamental questions in real life and sort of applies them to what they mean in the world of Middle-earth. And so I found this to be an interesting buy that I want to definitely probably going to be one of the big first ones I get through that are in the miscellaneous set. This one is Bilbo's Last Song. It's a very, very small book. This is the hardcover edition, mind you. So it's extremely small. But it's an epilogue to Lord of the Rings, written from the words of Bilbo, from Tolkien, obviously. But another fascinating one. Let me get close up. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I just realized I'm not getting very close up with all this. This one, I've been, on a religious journey, personally, for reasons I will not get into. But I had been very interested in, finding more Tolkien books, and this one, because Tolkien was a Catholic, he grew up as a Roman Catholic, or in Roman Catholicism, I'm pretty sure, or an English Catholic, depends on how you want to say it. This book essentially goes through the theology of Tolkien's work, him as a person, how he wrote certain things, how theological Tolkien's stories are, and it's pretty big. So this is one book I want to get to. I've actually read through a portion of it. It's actually very fascinating. Essentially just the mythology and the theology. I'm going to start moving quicker, so I don't want this video to be too long. Letters from Father Christmas. For any of you Tolkien readers out there, this one's a very popular one. For kids in particular. Recipes from the world of Tolkien. Essentially anything that could be the real life equivalent of food in Middle-earth, there's recipes for. I'm a brat. The Atlas of Middle-earth, so different pictures of different locations, like guides through different maps. It's recreations of a lot of the maps Tolkien had written, as well as maps that outline Rivendell. Let's see, what is in here? Hollow Circle, Tom Bombadil's house, and so just various places, regions throughout Middle-earth's history from the First to the Third Age. Essentially just kind of gives you a picture of what things looked like or could look like. This is another atlas, something similar. I'm not going to go through it, but geography of the Undying Lands, Middle-earth, and different regions of Arda. So same thing pretty much. Tom Shippey, The Road to Middle-earth, revised edition. This is another book I want to get into at some point. For Tom Shippey is a pretty good author. But yeah, I've heard this is a pretty popular book for Tolkien readers, and so I decided to pick it up, and eventually I'll get to it. Like I said, a lot of books I want to get to, but time. This one I'm actually currently reading is one of the books I'm reading right now. It's The Evolution of Tolkien's Mythology. And it essentially goes through, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, making all that, but it essentially also touches on each one of the History of Middle Earth books and kind of goes into the different characteristics of each of those books and how it outlines sort of the evolution of how Middle Earth grows into what it was written to be. So this is another one I'm reading, Humphrey Carpenter's J.R.R. Tolkien, a biography. It's one of the more popular biographical, probably one of the best, if not well-written, biography books. Another book I'm getting through, essentially tells you where Tolkien came from, how he was as a person. Humphrey Carpenter, I think, outlines how he actually met Tolkien and interviewed him, I'm pretty sure. So he kind of goes into that. It kind of just chronologically tells you how Tolkien grew up, his relationship with Edith, the tragedy of his father's death in South Africa from illness, and growing up and, finding faith, all this other stuff. I'm only a portion through it, but it's very interesting stuff. There's a lot of things I did not know that I'm learning. This one's a pretty fancy one. It's really small, but it's pretty cool. I'm actually going to use this for my club. It's called The Writing of Middle Earth, and essentially it shows you how to write runes, how to write anything from Dwarvish to Hobbiton to the Tingwar script that the elves use to write in their language. Sort of gives you meanings to certain letters and runes, like what does this mean, what does that mean, and then how do you put words together. So essentially it's like a how-to guide. This one is pretty good. It's the Complete Tolkien Companion. Essentially it's a dictionary, a giant dictionary, and a guide for any word, like any Middle Earth word, any place, anybody that is ever mentioned in any of The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Beren and Luthien, Fall of Numenor, Fall of Gondor. Literally, any character that you could ever be mentioned in Middle Earth's mythology is basically located in this companion guide. This companion guide essentially gives you dictionary definitions of people, places, times, meanings of certain words. Like any word that has a particular definition for the world of Middle Earth is outlined in here. Like, for example, let's see. Outer ocean, outsiders, overborn marshes, over heaven, over hill, over Leith. And then it gives definitions for each of those words, as you could sort of see. So basically, if you're more like, to me, I like physically reading books. Digitally, I'm not a big fan of digitally reading books. So like, if I'm reading one of the books, I actually have this by my side. Because, you could look up stuff on your phone, but, it's fun looking through pages. It's very old school. You look through a page and it's like, oh, that's what that means. And so I like doing it this way. So if I'm reading any of the books and I need to figure out who one person is in like a bit more like explanatory detail, this is what I'm going to have by my side constantly. I recommend this for anyone who's reading very heavy material from Tolkien. Pick this up, especially if it's Middle Earth related. Now we got, essentially it's just this one came out before the one I just showed you, but it's the Complete Guide to Middle Earth. Same thing. It's a bit more simpler. I don't like it as much because it doesn't go as in-depth on certain things that one goes into. So that one's probably your best bet because it's more updated. It's more revised. It's better in explaining certain things in better detail. Languages of Tolkien's Middle Earth. I picked this up not that long ago. Essentially, it's a guide. It says a complete guide to all 14 of the languages Tolkien invented. It contains a dictionary of all non-English words, an English-Elvish glossary, rules of grammar. So I guess it's another version of the rune writing book I showed you. This one's a bit older. I think this one came out in the 80s. It's been revised, I'm sure, but it shows you how to write in Quenya. Pronunciation of words, dictionary of certain Elvish words that have meaning, and essentially that's all that is. Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, A Secret Vice, Tolkien on Invented Languages. This one is about the kind of fundamental origins of how he created some of the languages, how language became sort of the secret vice to the whole, it's literally in the name, how it became sort of the binding factor for everything he's ever written. Because you gotta realize, He wrote all this stuff because he was a linguist. He wasn't writing for history. He based everything around the language. The language was some of the first stuff he ever created, and then he sort of built the world around to fit that language. I mean, there's more to it. There's a lot more to it than that, but I digress. You know, like I said, I'm not a Tolkien expert, but you know, language is a big part of Middle Earth for a lot of reasons. Like, he was an expert philologist, so. This one is really cool. This one I will partially use for my club as well. So we're going to do an activity where we're going to learn how to speak Elvish. This one's essentially a giant dictionary of how to speak Sindarin. And it gives you literally every word that you could say in the language. And essentially expansions on what Tolkien had created. Because people who are writing this and editing this are other language experts. So they've essentially created more finished and final forms of his languages. And essentially, it gives you guides on how to pronounce and enunciate and create sentences and sentence structures around the Elvish language. So it's a giant dictionary book, essentially. Very fundamental if you want to learn how to speak it. What should we get into next? I think we'll get into the more mainline books. Let's see. Well, I guess we'll start with some editions. So I picked this up actually the other day from Half Price Books. It's a copy of The Return of the King. It has this little red all around. It looks really cool. It was in good condition, even used. It's just one of many versions you'll find of The Lord of the Rings. This is a separate edition. It comes in its own set, but you have to... This one is from the UK. So you have to order these. You can get these from the UK since it has a UK tag on the back. This is a purple collector's edition of the Silmarillion. It comes with built-in bookmark. Has like blue tint or purple blue tint. The pages are it has a it's just really cool. I don't know how to explain it, but essentially it's a fancier way to read the book. If you want to feel fancy, here it is. But Silmarillion is arguably Christopher Tolkien's more important works he released first, like right out the gate after his father died, because the Silmarillion was something Tolkien Sr. had been writing for decades, essentially, by this point, and still didn't finish it. So essentially Christopher's job was to find all of his transcripts, put everything together. And mind you, Christopher Tolkien spent like at least 40 plus years, going through all of his father's work. It's insane what that man managed to do. People do not give Christopher Tolkien enough credit when it comes to like even half the stuff that's out right now. And it's just like, if it weren't for him, majority of the other books that's outside of like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings would not exist. Period. So big props to Christopher Tolkien for actually putting just massive literary and painstaking work to getting his father's unpublished manuscripts and stories out there. It's just like, it's insane what that guy managed to do. So people don't give him enough credit. This is another hardcover edition. It's the second edition of the Silmarillion. It has a better cover. I'm pretty sure this is the Awakening of the Elves, or if not the Awakening of the Elves, it's the movement of the elves that they're moving. Essentially this is just a hardcover edition of the book, another one. So pretty fancy. And yes, I have read the Silmarillion, so yes, I do know. Silmarillion is one of those books, though, I'm going to be real, like, I'm probably going to have to reread it again. So, yeah. A lot of things I don't, unfortunately, remember to the T, but I do remember most of the stuff, so. I have read it, yes. It took me a while to read it. One of the longest, like, reads I've had to do, because it was just, like, every 20 pages I wanted to set the book down and be like, I'm done for, like, 2 days, and so. This is the paperback version of that second edition, so nothing different. It's just been paperback. This is one I found the other day, which I found interesting. I never seen this cover of The Hobbit, and apparently it's a real thing. It has a map on the back, and it's like a, I don't know what edition this is. Maybe if anyone could put it in the comments, but like it has a really cool cover, and I'm just like, wow, it looks fancy. So I just bought it, and I was like, okay. Does it say? Usually it'll say what edition it is. I don't know. Maybe the late 90s. I could be wrong, but it looks cool. I was like, okay. Let's hit up. Not bad. Hit my elbow. All right, so I think we're just gonna get into this stuff first, and then we'll get into the illustrated editions of books last. Well, some illustrated editions are, I digress, but yeah. So I have the mass market paperback versions of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Pocket size. These are easily carryable everywhere. If anything, you can bring all 4 of these with no issues. I've already read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like I said, they're great books. I think it's just one of the most fascinating writings that an author will ever do. And it's just stuff that, a lot of books still have a hard time getting to this level. But, yeah, it's really cool. It looks nice. I like the cover art styles. Of Mordor, I'm pretty sure, and then like Dragon Smaug, the door of Durin from Moria, and so yeah, it's really cool cover art, and so yeah, I think it was just one of the sets I wanted to get for a while, so I was just like, why not? But move this out of frame a little bit. This table's not very big, so this is another paperback box set of Lord of the Rings. It's illustrated, or the illustrated like set in itself. The books aren't. I probably should have got those. Nah, it's fine. I mean, really cool cover art. Who illustrated this? Cover design by Christopher Moisan did the cover arts for this, so really cool. Just another version of the books, mainly Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return of the King to read. So, yeah, this one is probably one of the more popular sets I think anyone should get, especially if they want like a good sized paperback, and also want all of the books separated into their own, volumes. This is one of the more popular ones I found on Amazon. Package came a little dent on top, but it is made. It's another HarperCollins publisher edition of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and so yeah, really cool. I just like the eye, or the eyes, and then like the mountains, how most of them like connect and stuff, especially the Lord of the Rings one, which are cool. Let's see. They're all like, cover arts are pretty cool, pretty shiny and sick. But yeah, these are really cool. You get the book and you read it, and it's just another awesome, I think, edition of the reading the book. And so the pain part is getting it back in sometimes without not trying to damage it. So there's that. So I'm gonna set that there. Let it fall. So I have, now we're gonna get into some of the history of Middle Earth stuff. This one took about a month and a half to get in the mail because I had to order it from the UK. But it's the paperback version of the index. Technically, you could argue, well, it is technically, but it's usually not included in some sets. Some. I'll get to one set here where it is included. But this is volume 13 of the History of Middle Earth. really not much to this other than it's an index that essentially compiles all the names and stuff that were referenced and everything throughout the History of Middle-earth books and puts them into a single volume to read. So essentially this is just an index of all the books. So all the History of Middle-earth books in particular, to be specific. So yeah. See, the fun part is going to be putting all this back on my shelf the way I had it. So yeah. Picked this up from Half Price Books. Pretty good condition though, too. I mean, it has some bending on the frame, but Morgoth's Ring essentially talks about the later Silmarillion. And yeah. So kind of the Quinta Silmarillion, I think is what it's more or less called. But you know, the History of Middle-earth books are essentially Christopher's try at explaining and understanding about what Tolkien had changed throughout the creation of Middle-earth stories. It's a lot more complex than that, but essentially it's as chronological as it could get to how Middle-earth was created, how some of these stories were shaped and formed. Unpublished material in particular that were featured in the History of Middle-earth sets. Stuff that was expanded upon that sort of was more simplified in the appendix of Return of the King. So yeah, very cool edition. This one was actually it was John Howe, I think that's how you say his name. John Howe illustrated this. It's really cool. It has Morgoth and Ungoliant, the spider. So Ungoliant, I think that's the spider's name. I always said it wrong when I first read the books, but The Lord of the Ring, paperback edition of one of the volumes. What volume is this? 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. This is volume 8, technically. So this one would be the 8th one in the History of Middle-earth set. Kind of goes into the, more... There's multiple that kind of talk, go into the Lord of the Rings writing, but this one is, I don't know. Like I said, some of these I haven't even gone through, so I don't know much about this one, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of reading. Essentially, it's more in Lord of the Rings, like how Lord of the Rings is written in some aspects. I think the character Gollum talks about the meaning of the One Ring and stuff. This one, The Return of the Shadow, this is actually what I'm pretty sure this is what the Fellowship of the Ring was initially supposed to be called, and then he changed it to the Fellowship of the Ring. But this one, yeah, an abandoned title for the first volume. Essentially, it's the early draft plans of Lord of the Rings, like more intrinsically, like the beginnings of the actual Lord of the Rings book that was written. Essentially, it's Christopher's narrative and commentary on his father's manuscripts, early manuscripts, and a lot of the writing that he changed, revised, and created, and then what ended up becoming Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. This is the Book of Lost Tales, Part 1 and Part 2. So these are the first 2 volumes of the History of Middle-earth set that essentially, go into a lot of the unpublished material, some of Tolkien's earliest writings, and fairy stories that sort of built into the Silmarillion, then led into like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, more or less the other 2, but essentially it's some of Tolkien's earliest writings and sort of earliest versions of what would become Arda, of what would become Middle-earth, and what would become the world we know. So, and there's some stuff that isn't necessarily Middle-earth related from my understanding that's in here, like not incredibly directly, but just tales that J.R. had written that kind of go into some of the earliest writings, but majority of it was all about, early versions of the Silmarillion, and essentially that exists within here. So now we're going to get into the actual History of Middle-earth, like, box sets that I have. I guess we'll start with Head Honcho right here. Or no, we're going to start with the paperbacks here. These mass market ones. So these are illustrated by John Howe. These are paperback versions. I know the Silmarillion, some people debate whether it's included, but whatever. The Silmarillion mass market paperback, pretty good condition for these books. I mean, they have yellowing. I mean, that's normal, but this is The Lost Road and Other Writings. I know in this one he writes a time travel story. Him and C.S. Lewis essentially challenged each other to write different fictional narratives. And C.S. Lewis had written some space trilogy thing, I believe, and then that ended up actually being released. And then Tolkien had written a time travel story that sort of led into the fall of Numenor. And, well, he abandoned the story, but continued working on, essentially morphed into Numenor's story. This is The Shaping Middle-earth. Another John... These are really cool cover arts, though, for paperbacks, like mass market ones. I'm like, hey, I was impressed. Another John Howell, Lays of Beleriand. The Book of Lost Tales 1. So this is the mass market paperback version of this. But... oh, man. This is going to be rough. Try to get all these books. Oh boy. I should have done this better. Anyway. Yeah. So we're going to get into the head honchos. This is one of the first big sets I got for my birthday late last year. This is the History of Middle-earth 3-volume hardcover set. Now, what's interesting about this, usually a lot of people would say if you're just a collector, specifically getting these is recommended just for collection purposes. Now, you can read them. They're readable books. The cool thing about these is it combines all 12 of the History of Middle-earth volume sets that came out in the paperback and combines them in 3 different volumes. Essentially, it takes multiple of the stories and puts them and categorizes them in some of the books. And so, for example, volume 3 has 10, 11, and 12, Morgoth's Ring, the War of Jewels, the Peoples of Middle-earth. So it has three of the separate volumes in one hardcover. So there's 3 different books in this. Essentially, there's multiple books in each one of these. So it just combines them all. It just makes everything more compact. So you can read them, to be fair. And I have kind of gone through some pages. The paper is very thin, like Bible paper is what a lot of other Tolkien YouTube channels call it. So it's very thin. But, it can be pricey. It can be cheaper. I know when I got it, it was only $130-something on Amazon, brand new. So these really priced, like, to get all 12 books in the brand new format in a compact version, $130, not bad. So usually that's where I get a lot of my books, Amazon. Yeah, I know. But so that's these ones. Set these aside. Show them over here. Oh, excuse me. Oh man, that was embarrassing. But I burped. Anyway, so now we're getting into. These are my more recent ones. I just got the 3rd box set yesterday in the mail. These are something I've been getting the last couple weeks, and I finally got the last one. So we're going to go in order. I don't want to go out of order. So these are illustrated by John Howell. These are essentially expanded upon illustrations by John Howell of the History of Middle-earth. Now, the thing is, the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales are included in here. Some YouTube channels attribute this to it just being like, you can interpret this as, oh, this is just them including the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales because they were works that were finished and edited by Christopher post Tolkien Sr.'s death. So why not include them in the set? Plus, it makes everything more even and whatever and spread out, which is fair. But technically, the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales are not part of the History of Middle-earth set. There's only 12 volumes. This would make it an extra 2 volumes, but really it's just, I'm assuming it's just to kind of get a lot of what Christopher had written. So the cool thing about these is they have illustrations all in the books, all illustrated. Here's the cool part. They have inverted covers too. So if you want the more classic, kind of scholarly looking versions of the book, so essentially these are the original cover arts. You do this. Sorry. Let's do this. I'm terrible at doing the things. Hold on. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna hold up. Wait a minute. This is a lot harder than I thought. I'm probably doing this way wrong, but I'll do it just for you guys. I think, oh, that's why. It's because I got the paper wrong. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm doing this way wrong. So, you could use the original covers. So, these are essentially revised versions of the original covers of the History of Middle-earth stuff. So, essentially, if you want the more classic look, the more nostalgic look, you could basically invert the covers. I'm doing a terrible job, so we're just going to leave it at that. I don't want to mess anything up, so I'm probably doing it way wrong, I'm going to be real, but I'm not, an expert. Hi, sorry, the video cut off because I had laundry that I had to go get, so I had an alarm that go off, so yeah. Anyway, this is the first, this is the first one out of the John Howe illustrated hardcover set. This is the second one, which has The Laser Valerian, The Shaping of Middle-earth, and The Lost Road. All illustrations by John Howe again. That's the second one. This is the third one. This has Return of the Shadow, Treason of Isengard, The War of the Ring, and Sauron's Defeat. So, fancy. Very fancy. Then this is the last one out of the set. Morgoth's Ring, War of the Jewels, Peoples of Middle-earth, and the hardcover index. So, yes, those are the History of Middle-earth illustrated box sets. These are my more recent ones. Now we're going to get into some of the more interesting regular editions, or the cool editions of some of the main books. One of them is not really a main book, but I included it anyway, because why not? J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fall of Numenor. This one's a hardcover, edited by Brian Sibley. Not everything was edited by Christopher Tolkien. It was pretty much after he died, different people kind of took over some stuff. Illustrations by Alan Lee, as you can see. Sauron is right there, kind of hanging around over the destruction of Numenor. Very cool cover art. This one is cool. It's called The Maps of Middle-earth. It's edited by Brian Sibley and illustrated by John Howe again. But the cool thing is, this book comes with 4 different maps. Or I'm assuming made by John Howe, and he did all the drawings, but it just goes over the different maps, the different places on Middle-earth. It's kind of drawings from Tolkien that he had drawn, and some of it's recreated to give readers a better interpretation of the maps that Tolkien had drawn out. This one I read one time. I'm going to have to read through some of it again because it's been a while. This one's Beren and Luthien. Essentially, something that never was quite fully finished from Tolkien Sr., but Christopher had edited it and put it in a cohesive format, and it kind of goes into some of the changes that the passages, some revised passages, some finalized ones, early versions. So essentially takes everything written about Beren and Luthien, puts it in here, and call it a day. And so it's a tragic tale about a mortal man and an elf. Obviously, one of them gets sent to go get a Silmaril, or to retrieve a Silmaril from Morgoth. You know what happens after that. But the Children of Hurin, another tragic tale. This one I have not read yet, but I heard it's really good. Turin and Doriath. So, yeah. Fall of Gonwin. This is actually one of the first stories Tolkien Sr. had actually written within the world of Middle-earth. So, Alan Lee illustrations are goated, too. And crazy. Adventures of Tom Bombadil. Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a revised and expanded edition to include more letters that the first edition didn't have. I do not have the first edition. I just picked this one up. I don't think I'm going to get the original. Unfinished Tales of Numenor Middle-earth. This one's illustrated by Alan Lee. Has illustrations in the... illustrations by Adam Lee, John Howe, and Ted Nasmith. So this has 3 illustrators. So, yeah. Unfinished Tales was another popular one post Tolkien Sr.'s death that came out by Christopher Tolkien. Silmarillion, the one and the only. This is the illustrated copy. This is the regular version. There's a deluxe version, but it's too expensive. And so, finished this book. Very goated. Very good. I love the whole historical context of the book because I'm a big history reader. I love reading history books. So it reads just like a history book that I would read personally. And I know not everyone's going to enjoy that, but I digress. The Lord of the Rings, illustrated by the author. So this has original illustrations by J.R.R. Tolkien himself. This is The Fellowship, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, all in one volume. And then the last one I have is The Hobbit, illustrated by the author. Has more original illustrations by Tolkien Sr. The Hobbit, everyone knows The Hobbit. Everyone should know The Hobbit. Originally written as a children's tale for his kids that kind of turned into a masterpiece of its own right and was revised again after Lord of the Rings came out to make changes to A Riddle in the Dark, which is the scene that plays out between Bilbo and Gollum in the cave. So yeah, that is my Tolkien collection. I know I don't want to make this video super long and congested. It's just but it's been a while since I made a video. I want to make videos in better quality because I know this is kind of scuffed, but camera's shaking because I'm moving. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. And this is gonna be unedited. I'm not gonna edit this other than putting the 2 clips together because my phone cut off. But yeah, this has been my Tolkien collection so far. I'll make any updates for anything else I get in the future. Probably do just YouTube shorts. So, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I will sort of create another video probably talking about what different I want to do with this channel going forward. And, yeah, you're probably going to see a lot more Tolkien involved. I will say that. But, hope you guys enjoyed. Much love. And this is Nick signing off.